It starts being, and before it was.
Well, that's later. That's like the Catholic Church and stuff. I'm talking about early Christianity, like within the first, 70 years or so, 100 years or so, before Constantine and, the rest of Christian history, where Christianity becomes more mainstream. But as it's described in the Gospels and in the Pauline epistles, early Christianity seems to be that of people who gave up their lives from higher positions of power or from lower positions of power, wherever, gave up their normal lives to follow the ideas of Christ, and that being material possessions being part of it. Yeah, that's absolutely, first of all, in line with church teachings, but also historically true for early churches. A lot of early churches didn't have churches. They were just houses that people learned in, for example. The idea of having the buildings to even have their places of worship was not even publicly accepted by many folks back then. So yeah, it's definitely an ascetic life for sure.
It sounds like you're saying that people gave up their own power to the will of an authority. That sounds just like a socialist nation.
I'm not saying it's not socialist. I'm saying Jesus is a socialist dude, but that's different from giving authority. Giving power to a nation is different from, following a cult leader. Like, Jesus does say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which a lot of people have like debated on what that actually means. Personally, it means is just to pay taxes, I think is literally what he's saying there. So yeah, there is some healthy debate to be said about whether or not Jesus would support, I don't know, a socialist form of government. But I think Jesus was all about the spirituality, at least as he's portrayed in the Gospels. But yeah, has it been used to support, nationalism? Absolutely.
Yes, but are you seeing the similarities between a socialist government and trying to control everything within an individual's life? How they try to make everything so complex, because the more complex you make society.
Hang on. I think we may have different ideas of what socialism is. Socialism is when the means of production are owned by the people. It's when we live in cooperative. Socialism is actually a relatively small government concept. There are. I don't want to get into a debate about political science because I'm not an expert, but socialism does not automatically mean totalitarianism and communism. Socialism is the means of production are owned by the people.
Yes, but it inevitably leads to totalitarianism. It does.
No, I would argue against that. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
I also think that's way off topic here.
Yeah.
Because originally I think the idea is that the Bible can be used to justify command economy. And yes, I think it can be. I also think it can be used to justify socialism. I also think it can be used to justify communism. It totally
Crazy
can.
thing about the Bible, it can be interpreted a lot of ways. And if the Bible is about command economy, explain the Mennonites, explain the Amish.
Yeah. The Apostle Paul hadn't heard of Karl Marx yet, so he wasn't really like on that. I think he was more interested in the spiritual matters than defining any sort of government structure. But can it be used? Absolutely. The Bible can be used to justify really just about anything.
But we all know there's no such thing of spiritual matters. So basically, we have to use these terms as variables for what they would mean in an economic sense. And I'm
why?
More and more.
Why do we have to do that?
Trying to set up their own government, to set up their own command economy of whatever form, be it socialism or communism.
Okay. I don't know if you know the history of socialism as a movement or Marxism as a movement, but they're almost exclusively atheist in nature. Literally, there is a group called the League of Militant Atheists that started within Russia as soon as the Russian Revolution started, where they tried to institute basically state atheism. It was terrible and not a good thing, but had nothing to do with Christianity. They were actually anti-Christian. They shut down churches so that they could put in science museums and stuff. It's a really bizarre time in history. But if anything, the most socialist of nations, or the ones that have at least given interest to socialism, are the least Christian ones in some respects.
And a lot of liberal nations that are currently in the world, like the Scandinavian countries, are far more secular than places like the US and other that are actual theocracies like Saudi Arabia and things like that. And they have a lot of social programs. And that's not because of religion. It's completely separate to it. So I really am not seeing where you're coming from here, Chief. I don't think there is a through line from an inevitability of religion or Christianity to command to sort of socialism or communism or totalitarianism. I just think that the Bible can be interpreted by people for whatever ends they want. It's been used to defend and allow slavery in equal measure. You can make it whatever you like, almost, in some ways.
Yeah. It's a choose your own adventure book, really.
That's actually pretty funny. But yes, you're right.
I'm a funny guy. You should watch more of this show. And I'm going to let you go because we're getting towards the end of the show and I want to talk to some more callers. But look, if you're going to call into a show, first of all, I think, I guess if it's not your first time watching, I guess you can call in, but maybe you should watch more of what we have to say here, because I think you would find it interesting. We may have thought about this stuff a little bit more than you give us credit for. Okay. Like, you're definitely not the first person to say that a lot of people want to get into religion for money, and have made the connection between religious dogma and support of socialism. Even I don't think that's actually a very common point that some people bring up, that Christianity does support socialism more than it does capitalism. And there's a lot of debates about that. So yeah, there's something to be said about that, but I do have to let you go because we got some other stuff we got to do. But please keep watching. And then next time, maybe we'll talk about what you said about trans people, because that wasn't cool. Because trans people are valid and shouldn't be disrespected like that. I don't know where he was going on with that, but that's a whole other can of worms.
I was holding myself back on just exploding on that one,